just give up. There it is. Everything is delayed this morning. Two minutes over, and Roberto is already saying, "Where do we get it? Where's the community stand-up? Why aren't you guys on there?"
You're live.
I know.
I find it annoying too, because frankly, this show isn't that interesting.
We keep saying that.
You know what I mean?
People
I would disagree. I would disagree.
Watch the show every week. We love the show.
Yeah, we're all at NDC Australia, and I had so many people come up and say, "I watch every week," and one guy tell me he's never missed a show.
We need more bald white guys, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's the thing this show is missing.
Mm-hmm.
Although we do spotlight people from around the world during
Hang on
the
a second.
spotlight.
Where are you, John? Are you in your garage?
Kind of. It's a remodeled garage.
Do you have a new camera?
Yes, there's something different.
Hang on, I'm going to click on you and make you the spotlight. All right. Okay, this is totally a new camera.
It's a rebuilt computer. It's the same camera.
No, it's different.
Well, I think normally I screw with it and zoom in, and
why do you? Yeah, like this is now you have the same
job.
framing as all of us.
Yeah. You've always been this guy, John. You've always been, hey, it's John, and now there you go, exactly.
Yes.
So I've always seen your cool shelves,
right,
and not your unfinished wall.
Right. See,
never seen the air conditioner before.
Is that an air conditioner?
It is an air conditioner.
And is it on your exercise equipment?
Yes.
It's in front of my exercise equipment. This room's actually
thereby blocking access to the exercise equipment?
Well, it's like 10 feet away from the exercise equipment.
Oh.
Yeah, next week I'll go back and do some pull-ups. You can watch. Actually, I don't do the pull-ups. My kid comes in and does pull-ups all the time, so that's really, yes. I have spotlight items this week, though.
Hello.
Should I do that? Yeah?
Yes.
All right, let's do this.
That was the softest intro I think we've ever done.
Yeah.
Soft, as in...
It was just like we didn't even say hello.
I'm sorry. Hang on. Hello. I didn't see you there. All right, go ahead, John.
All right. Excellent. Okay. So first of all, just reminding people, we've got the Getter thing. This is where the chat is. If you've got questions to ask, do it there. So excellent.
What is the URL? .im, right? Always get that.
Getter.im/ASP.NET/home.
Ooh, that didn't work at all. I got a Firefox error. Problem loading page. That's unfortunate.
All right. So on to the next. So Steve Smith, nice article in MSDN magazine where he's writing about real-world ASP.NET Core filters. So he talked about, we got this question in our workshop last week. People are asking, like, when do I use a filter? When do I use middleware? So he addresses that here. He explains, like, how to use filters, how to test them, all kinds of good stuff there. Khalid has an article on using Semantic UI with ASP.NET Core. So Semantic UI is an alternative to Bootstrap. As the name suggests, it is more semantic. So it's a little bit more of a learning curve, but cleaner HTML. So if you're into semantic stuff, semantic HTML, this is nice. He's got a walkthrough on that. By the way, one other place you may see that is the Yeoman scaffolders now includes semantic as an option there too.
Fancy.
Yep. So Khalid, he snuck it by us. He's got two different blogs.
What?
And yeah, here's Khalid's Semantic UI, and here's Khalid's other one.
He has two different blogs with different...
I have no... Actually, he may have 20 blogs. Like, there's... I know only the lower bound is 2. So... So Khalid is writing about strongly typed configuration settings in ASP.NET Core. So he kind of continued on this conversation from Rick Strahl's post. Rick Strahl wrote one, but Khalid said he didn't like using IOptions-T and having to kind of include that all over through his code. So he walks through a solution where he's injecting one that doesn't require him to use IOptions everywhere. Another look at that. John Callaway, I like his name here. So John Callaway is writing on generic repository and dependency injection with .NET Core, so that's nice. Nice code there.
Does he look like you?
I don't think so. No, I
I'm
follow
just
him on
wondering
Twitter.
Is he
if he has
Bizarro,
hair and
John?
he's clean shaven.
I was going to say, is he Bizarro,
No,
John?
no, but look at this. When I mouse over him, look,
He does
he does.
bonsai. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness,
but he rotates. Look at that.
even
I
better.
love that. Um, this is this is the stress test tool that Damien pointed out to me last week for
Ooh, that is
our thing on
attractive.
Kestrel. It's beautiful,
It's
right?
attractive.
So
Ah,
so this is out on GitHub,
I
and
might have to dig into that one.
It's called
yeah,
Netling, and the
Netlink.
backstory behind this is that after David and I gave our talk at NDC Oslo on building or making Kestrel super fast,
Uh-huh.
apparently this dude was inspired by that talk and went and built a load test generator out of WPF and .NET. So there's a command line version and there's a WPF version.
That is going to be lovely for presentations. I don't know whether it's legit. Like we'll have to dig into. So you use
use
this?
it in NDC Sydney because you can even compare two results and it gives you.
Oh, scrumptious.
Yeah,
Now, how
And
does
it's
this
nice.
relate to Rick
You can turn on
Strall's?
pipelining, thread affinity.
Very
it's
nice.
pretty sweet. Yeah, and baselines also, so you can set baselines and you can compare across them. So.
And another thing about this, and like something for all of us to kind of remember, is it's attractive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's nicely laid out.
Oh
And
boy,
so
yeah.
often
We like shiny
Microsoft,
things.
Microsoft employees, Microsoft developers of all flavors kind of slap stuff together. This is like also pleasant looking.
Yeah, but it's just and it wasn't that hard. Like it's just a good use of white space. I mean, look at it. It's a very thoughtful grid layout with nice, focusing with the font.
It's clean, nice fonts,
large,
bold.
with capitalized labels, which is very the Metro, sort of stuff.
Yeah, man.
With lowercase too. And then the little bars on the left with the colors to really help you.
Yeah. I know we're talking about how it's pretty.
Well, in the world of benchmarking tools, that really stands out because if you look at AB or WRK or any of these other ones, they're horrible, right? So I mean,
this is really great for on-stage demos because it's very easy to see what's happened.
Yep, it's my new favorite thing.
All right. So this is Steve Gordon, and he's writing. He's working on the Already project, which we've mentioned several times. That's a great open source project using Asp Net Core, and so mentioned it several times. Recommend getting involved with it. But here's something that was interesting: when they moved to 1.0 RTM, they needed to make a change here. Because the previous entity framework was a little bit more loose on, you could pass a bunch of stuff into it, some new and some existing entities, and call update, and it would figure it out for you. And they've tightened that down now. If you pass in something that is new and call update, it's not going to like magically do it for you. So here is, this is kind of nice. This is a one-liner here, this thing where it basically says, get itinerary, and if it's null, then do context add. So this was a recommendation from Arthur Vickers, who's a dev on the team, knows what he's doing, and this is how he recommended doing it. So I just like that, that he dug into the code and explained exactly, how they changed it and stuff.
Nice.
This is Chris Myers, and he's writing about debugging Dockerized .NET Core apps with VS Code.
Wow, a little light reading.
Yeah, well, it actually isn't that hard.
Don't scroll so fast because the frames drop. You got to zoom in and let it not JPEG.
Let it cook.
Let me show you the more important part. Is there's a scaffolder that will build out a Docker file debug and a Docker task file. So basically, once you add that in, that is going to, let me zoom there. So once those are added in, you're able to debug the Docker files or Docker apps. So that's kind of cool. I wasn't aware of that, so there you go.
Yeah, that's something that we're actually working very hard on for the next release, is making that entire experience of doing .NET Core and ASP.NET Core dev in Docker containers much more first class, so that you don't have to, do crazy things to have that work.
I've got someone knocking on the door, so continue without me.
Okay.
Cool. Eric Fisher posted two things on the Code School blog, kind of starting a series on development with ASP.NET and .NET Core. So he started out by explaining kind of why .NET and explaining kind of in the what's the point, how it fits in with other tools you could pick. So a nice kind of overview there. And then he dug in further with, like actually writing applications. So this is an intro, and then they've got a full .NET MVC course as well. This is cool. So this is the learning section of the links. This is from Bobby Johnson, and he's writing this thing. This is if you're getting started and learning C#, including cross-platform C#. These are koans, so that's kind of a popular thing. It's koans or koans, but where you go through and you basically like, solve a broken unit test, and you kind of work your way through. So nice to see that. And then 2 intros. This is Radu, and he's talking. This is an intro to Asp Net Core, MVC, and API, and so nice, a lot of code here, good stuff. And this is from Swaminathan, and he's talking about running your first Asp Net Core web API on a Mac. And so again, this is a nice kind of overview, intro on building an API, and working with that all on a Mac. And that is it. So great, they just keep coming in every week. It's hard to filter them down to just the ones to share. Yeah. There's always so many. So
I'm just answering some questions in the Getter room, but I guess I should give an update on what we're doing. So we've been out. We were all 3 of us in Australia last week at NDC Sydney, and so you, Scott, and I taught a workshop. The workshop we've been doing around the world. Is that a whiskey, John, or was that a coffee? Is that an espresso on ice?
Unfortunately, this is a Diet Coke.
A Diet Coke on a.
But now you're giving me ideas. I don't know.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. I like to think it's
a whiskey. Well, hello there.
Well, hello there. I mean, it is like 8 hours ahead, right, where you are.
Right.
So
right.
Let's just go with that. So yeah, we did the 2-day workshop at Sydney, and then we did a couple talks. You helped me with the Kestrel talk this time instead of David, and that went down really well. I did a deep dive talk with a bunch of demos. Hanselman did like 37 talks.
Yeah.
And apparently keynotes and goodness knows what else. I did a user group thing too on the Wednesday night, and then a couple of days with family and back here again. So that's why we weren't on last week. Other than that, we're all, in terms of Asp Net Core and whatnot, we're all working hard on the next version. We did the blog post a few weeks ago about the roadmap. We're still sort of solidifying that schedule, and once we have some firmer ideas on those dates, then we'll update everyone with those. I think the blog post just talks about like 6 monthly windows, like Q4, Q1, because we don't really have a good idea quite yet of where those are going to land. But we did highlight some of the features. The MVC view pages feature has a functional prototype right now, which is actually on my list of things to go and play with this week, so we can start doing some iterative sort of feedback, test, do some development, feedback, that sort of loop. So that's good. We've got a functional prototype of the Razor pre-compilation support, so bringing back support for pre-compiled views with a new tool. So that's working as well, and we've gone to great effort to ensure that the way pre-compilation works ensures that the views, you shouldn't run into any weirds if you decide to pre-compile your views rather than runtime compile, because it effectively works the same way. And indeed, I don't even think you have to change your app currently. I think you just have to run the tool, and that takes care of everything. You don't have to change any code in your app or anything for it to load pre-compiled views, so that's a win as well. What else? We're still working through some changes to the DI system, working closely with the authors of the various .NET IOC container libraries to make some improvements to the DI system that will make it simpler for those authors to integrate their DI containers with our system. What else is going on? As I mentioned, we're doing a bunch of work with Docker and containers. Glenn on my team's been doing a lot of work on that, and there's a big working group across .NET and ASP.NET and a few other teams to make sure that the container story is really good for .NET Core, especially the development story. So I expect to see some good progress on that in the next release as well. And we're also working to finalize kind of our release and versioning strategy across the whole suite of things that cover .NET Core and the packages and ASP.NET Core and all that type of thing, so that there's a nice predictable sort of cadence of releases and what goes into what type of release and stuff. And there was a blog post sort of a first blog post about this a couple of weeks ago in terms of support and the concepts of an LTS release and an FTS release. And again, we're working hard to really sort of crisp up some of those details so that we can give some more representative examples of what will happen. Like what happens if we have some bugs? What happens if when we wanted to release some features? How does that affect LTS versus FTS and those type of things? So expect that to come up very, very soon. Trying to think. Response caching middleware, the work has started on that as well. One of the developers here is working on that. That started before I left, so I haven't checked in on that since I got back, so I'll have to go and do that this week. And then the other couple of things that I think I spoke about before, what were they? The URL rewrite middleware, I think, is also functional now. And then there was the view components as tag helpers work that had happened as well, which is still ongoing. And there's a lot of other little things, but they're kind of the big things that I can recall off the top of my head that we're currently working hard on. So other than that, I was going to answer some questions if people have any in the gitters.
Well, one related question to the overview and updates you're giving, Felix asks if there's an update to the next version of the core tools.
Say that again?
Is there an update on next version of Visual Studio .NET Core tools?
You mean an update in sense of like schedule updates?
Yeah, anything. All right.
No, nothing. I mean, like I said, we won't be making any announcements on here. So if there is an update, it'll be on the blog in terms of timelines and those type of things. But I don't have any updates in terms of next version of .NET Core tools. All I can tell you is they're working hard on them. So.
Cool. Okay. Andre asks. Oh wait, no. Let me see. Paul asks, what's the status of the request validation built into IIS handlers being available, maybe as middleware for ASP Net Core?
There isn't any status because that has never been asked before. We haven't got a plan to do that currently. So it's funny, we were looking at the request filtering feature in IIS yesterday and discussing whether, and I think request filtering is part of the request validation features, and we had a very small discussion about what it would mean to have those as middleware. Yeah, that's something that we'll probably look at, but we don't have any firm plans on when that would come in. I think it's the first time I've heard that asked, actually.
Okay.
So the request filtering allows you to set up stuff in XML in your web.config in system.webserver that will kind of say, hey, if the header, this header, like content type, is longer than 100 characters, then reject the request. And there's a whole bunch of things like that that allow you to validate requests very early on in the pipeline in IIS. You could just write all this code yourself in handlers, in middleware today in ASP Net Core, but I can certainly see how it would be nice if people wanted to import the rules they already had from IIS and have them run in middleware in ASP Net Core. So that's something that's worth looking at.
Cool. Okay, let me see. Alejandro asks if we'll be writing up something to show how to do port forwarding to run ASP.NET on Apache. So I know on the docs we do have some information on running, but I think that's maybe specific to Nginx.
We have some Nginx instructions because they, it was just the popular one that we chose at the time, and it's common to use for starting a process that's your application and then forwarding requests to it. I know we've also looked at HA proxy internally recently. I'm not sure. I don't think we have any doc on that though yet. And Apache, I wouldn't know off the top of my head what module you would use in Apache. I mean, forwarding requests is one thing, but you need something to start the process as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if there's anything out of the box that does that in Apache, or whether you'd have to find a module that does the kind of the process management as well.
Cool. All right, let me see. Okay, so Andre is asking any news for ASP.NET JavaScript services.
Yeah, so basically we're in a stage of getting feedback on that, so we're encouraging people to go and engage in the community on that over on the GitHub repo. And if you have feature suggestions or issues or just things that you like or things that you don't like, we're really encouraging people to give all that feedback over on the GitHub repo, so we can get a sense of how close we are to something that's worth shipping as a 1.0. There's a set of features that sort of the JavaScript services stuff delivers right now. Most of it is codified in a series of templates, which I think are only in Yeoman right now. Is that right?
That's true. Yep.
Yeah. So obviously, to take that to the next step, we'd want to have Visual Studio templates and things like that as well. But we really need people to give us feedback on that before we bless that as a 1.0 under the fully sort of supported set of stuff. But Steve tells me that they've got some good engagement over there. So
yeah, I've been following that repo, and there's both a lot of discussion in the issues. There have been some some nice pull requests merged recently, and a lot of commits regularly. So I've been keeping up with it, and it's very easy to get started if you do want to. I mean, it's just Yeoman templates. You can be up and running in a few minutes. So
okay.
Yep, cool.
Cool, yeah.
Let's see. I don't see more questions.
Well, that was easy. Someone was asking about loading XML configuration files.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep. They actually asked it, this was Andre, asking specifically in the context of configuration manager XML configs. So, but then they also ask, is there an add JSON file extension method for XML configuration? Those two things are different. So we do have the ability to load XML files into the new configuration system that's in Asp Net Core. But that's not the .NET XML configuration sort of format. That's actually schema-based and is strongly typed. And so we don't have an extension for our configuration system that loads those XML files, because those XML files relate directly to specific areas of the .NET configuration system. If you want to load those things in, then you could have an app.config file if you're targeting full framework with your Asp Net Core application. That will just work with standard .NET configuration as it ever did, and you can use configuration manager settings or whatever the API is to get the proper the .NET configuration typed XML or the loose settings out of that XML file. If you just want to use XML to store config, you can do that as well and use the new configuration system and load it from an XML file. Frankly, I don't know what will happen if you try and add one of the an app.config file and load that into the new configuration system. You'll just get a whole bunch of name value pairs that marry up to whatever schema you had decided to use in your app.config file. So I'm not quite sure how useful that will be, but you can try it.
All right. Yeah, that's it for questions.
That's it. That was easy, man.
Yeah.
Maybe people have forgotten that we can they can ask questions, or maybe that all the questions have been answered.
That's it. We're done.
We're done. Too easy. Oh! Someone's just asked a question about Kestrel. What is the current benchmark numbers for Kestrel plain text internally? AKA, how is the performance journey going? Good. So we continue to work hard on that. I think internally on the big iron servers, we're well over 5 million requests per second for plain text now. And we've submitted our first PR to the Tech Empower benchmarks repo, so we can get our that first set of results included in the next Tech Empower round. But we're still working really hard to figure out what the next steps are. So we've done a lot of looking at other stacks that are performing better than us on that particular benchmark. The gap closes a little bit when we start talking about the non-pipelined benchmarks, so JSON and those type of things. We also have database benchmarks set up and running now, which we still have to add more databases to, like we want to add Postgres and a couple of others, but we have those things running now in the benchmarks repo. Yeah, so we haven't stopped. There's still a lot of work to go to make Kestrel as fast as we can possibly make it.
So, question on that, and I've had other people ask me this too, so I'm kind of passing it on as well. But so when you go to the benchmarks repo, the README itself is updated 2 months ago.
Okay.
Is there a I don't know, like what's the process for as updates get done and all that for these, are these numbers still about right that you see on the benchmarks repo, or is it just kind of like
README?
Yeah, the README.
Oh, let's have a look. I don't update this anymore, actually. The engineering team does this now. But These numbers are coming from the server out here, not the big iron server in the perf lab. So my understanding is these numbers are pretty current.
Okay.
Okay, well, so where it says 1.174 million for plain text on Asp Net Core on Kestrel, that's correct, or roughly correct for the server that's out here. But as I said, the big iron server, which is a much, much bigger machine, 24 physical cores, 48 hyper-threaded, it's doing like 5.25 million requests per second. So quite a lot more. So which is good. It shows that Kestrel scales pretty good as you add more cores and give it more headroom. But we still have quite a way to go to get to the performance of Netty.
Great.
And
so
others.
we had a few more questions roll in.
Okay.
So Roberta is asking, how are we doing with the conversion of Nuget packages to core?
It continues to go. I mean, that's a community and ecosystem kind of thing that has to be worked through. So there are more and more every week, I think, that are announcing support for core, and that our own packages are included in that in terms of other Microsoft teams who ship .NET API, and we continue to work through that as appropriate. Some packages are blocked by the lack of or missing API that they might have in .NET Core. Others have converted okay. Some packages are simply being blocked because the authors aren't willing to do the work right now because of issues that they're hitting, which is perfectly fine, and we're trying to help them get through those issues. But yeah, we're working through that as quickly as we can, and we're eager to help people who might have issues, and it's great when the community jumps in and helps people who have issues with that as well.
Cool. Okay, filtering down to just the serious questions because there's a few unserious. So Torre, who's the and I'm saying his name wrong, I'm sure, but he's the one that wrote Halfling, and he said, "Did you guys run
Netlink? Not Halfling.
Oh, sorry.
Something else completely.
Wow, where's my brain? Need a refill of the whiskey. Did you guys run Netling on the internal test system?
I don't know. Can't remember. I didn't personally, but someone might have, but I don't know the results.
All right. Khalid asking, how is the Azure deployment performance issue coming? Any headway on that problem?
Yeah, so there was a bunch of things that contributed to that. The biggest thing is really the fact that on Kudu, which is specifically the Azure deployment thing we're talking about, Antares or Azure Web Services runs with this concept of a durable drive and a temporary drive or a local drive. And the durable drive is orders of magnitude slower than the local or temporary drive. And by default, when you have Kudu set up to do source control deployment, everything is done on the durable drive, which means that anything that does any type of file operation is really, really slow. And if you're not very careful in using when you write whatever it is that you're writing that's running on there, it can really amplify how long that takes. And so I showed a workaround on here that was you could instruct Kudu to do all the operations on the local drive with a couple of caveats, which drastically improved the deployment speed. We also did some profiling of Nuget.exe 3.5, and we found some bugs essentially that were causing them to do a lot more work because they weren't caching things that should have been cached. And so those fixes have gone into the final release for Nuget 3.5, and so once they're deployed to Azure, we'll get that benefit there. Similarly for the .NET CLI, which is the other half of the deployment story, you do a NuGet restore, and then you run a bunch of .NET commands. There was some low-hanging fruit in there as well that we were able to trim off in terms of saving a lot of disk operations, and they will ship in the next tooling update as well. So when we get that out, and the combination of those two things in Azure, hopefully we'll see a big improvement, and then there'll be a bunch of other things that we have to work through over time to get that further down. But those three things together, using the temporary drive and the improvements to NuGet, the improvements to the .NET CLI, do result in a much, much faster deployment time.
Okay. So a naive question on this, I forget if I asked this last time too, but it would seem like you could do like a write behind thing where you immediately write to the fast drive and then also like replicate that over to the slow drive as well. You know what I mean?
It's not as simple as that, because it's not as simple as just writing to disk. Like this is like doing operations on the drive itself. So like there's NuGet restore, they have to go somewhere. the replication thing actually already happens as part of deployment. In fact, when you tell it to use the temporary drive, the last step is it does a sync of the final package output of the, I mean, obviously because the site runs in the durable drive.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let me see. There's a few more coming through here. Andre asking if there's any news or design docs on the project JSON to CS Proj migration, specifically where package dependencies info would be stored.
I don't have any information on that. If you want to ask the team directly, you can. That's actually a good question. Who do you ask directly? That stuff will be announced in the blog, as we've said over and over again. Any updates on that will be sent to the blog so that it's sort of all coordinated at the same time. But the team is working hard on that right now.
Cool. So Johnny asked a question. Johnny asked a question which I can answer. So for Azure deployment performance, can it be benchmarked with Netling? And no, because Netling is an HTTP benchmarking solution. This is a okay. Let me see, Andre. How should I build when CSproj and Xproj when CSproj and Xproj in the same solution? Usually I do msbuild solution.sln, but Xproj project and the solution is failing on TeamCity CI server.
You should use msbuild.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the short answer is you should use msbuild.
Cool. Bora asking, will you offer new documentation guidance on core web API token authentication?
Yeah, that's something that we're still talking about. So Dan Roth on my team has been looking at that. We don't have an out-of-the-box solution for token auth in web API at the moment. You can use Identity Server, which runs on .NET Core now, to issue tokens and then use their middleware to do the token authentication. But we're still investigating what our sort of default solution should and will be there. So stay tuned on that.
Cool. All right, that's it.
Okay.
I think we should close out before anyone asks another question.
Yeah, before Scott comes back.
Right. And then since Scott's running the call, it'll just sit there for a while.
It'll just sit there forever and people can just watch Scott's empty office.
Sounds good.
Lovely. I will
All
engage
right.
dramatic Zoom. Oh, little stuttery today. Come on, remote. No, I'll have to resort to manual control. There we go.
Nice.
There's always a backup.
Sorry about that. I'm back, but I'm going to hang up now because it's over.